A new trailer for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave just released, and this one gives us way more to work with than the first did. We get a much clearer look at the setting, cast, and story, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to discuss here. In this video, I'll go over what's shown in the new trailer and talk about what it could possibly mean for how this game is going to turn out. But before we get into it, look at how cool this new Anna looks. She's not in the trailer, but the Fire Emblem Twitter account made it their avatar. I think it might be my favorite of the modern Anna designs. I really like the armor. The blue and gold look good paired with her traditional red. I wonder what she'll fight with. She's used bows and swords twice and axes and lances once. Maybe she'll be a grappler this time around, since we know the brawler class is coming back. Anyway, onto the actual trailer. The first thing we learn is that this game takes place in Dagda. We also see the kingdoms of Brezarant and Argo. At the center is Amalthea, a small island that seems to connect everything, so this setting seems to have a pretty similar setup to Three Houses. I actually think the setting is the most exciting thing about the trailer. I know I've kind of painted myself as an old head Kaga fan, which I am, but I also really do love Fodlan. For all the issues the two Fodlan games have, world building is certainly not one of them. So much thought and effort is put into making it feel like a living world with intriguing lore. It's probably my favorite continent since Yggdrasil. After Three Hopes was able to naturally build off the foundation set by Three Houses, seeing them explore a previously underdeveloped locale is really exciting. This also kind of makes me curious about the future of the series. Looking at the series' past, all of Kaga's games take place in the same shared universe, just on different continents. If Fortune's Weave is successful, I wonder if they'll go with that route. There are so many territories that could become the setting for a future game. Places like Morphes, Albanea, Bridget, and plenty more that we really don't know much about that could be expanded on in future titles. I don't think people would respond well to that given how controversial Three Houses is in some circles, but I don't know, I'd like it. I like the idea of them building a giant world instead of just a bunch of one-off continents. It seems like Fortune's Weave will mostly take place in Dagda's capital, Dagzian, where the tournament we heard about in the first trailer will be held. We get a couple cutscene clips here and get a glimpse of what seems to be this game's Cain and Abel. I've said this before, but if they're gonna bring back old archetypes, then I hope they can find interesting ways to implement them. I want to see them do creative or unique things with these old tropes, not just be two random dudes who happen to wear red and green. Next we see art of the four protagonists, and I think it looks great. Chinatsu Kurahana is returning, and I really like her art style. I do wish they actually had her draw the in-game portraits too. The difference between them is pretty jarring, and I vastly prefer Kurahana's art. I get that they probably go with this style for the portraits so that they don't look too different from the in-game models, but I still find it disappointing. They have brief character bios for each hero, and I don't really have anything to add here other than Kai's dad is dead. The man is cooked. Not only is he a father to a Fire Emblem protagonist, but he's starting the game in peril. He is long gone. We get some glimpses of new characters afterwards, and the most interesting one to me is this elf-eared girl. The announcer at the tournament has similar ears, so we can assume they might belong to the same race, but it's unclear if they're Nabatean. We also see a conversation involving Alucard where he says the F word, Fodlan. He says a sword has been passed down to him from his forebears from Fodlan. We already knew he had the crest of Lamine on top of looking identical to Yuritsa, but this confirms that he's related to them. This does beg the question of why it's a sword when the Lamine relic weapon was a gem in Three Houses. It's possible that this was just an undiscovered relic weapon, or maybe it's a counterfeit utilizing similar technology to Edelgard's Aimer. Next is a scene with Theodora where we learn her dad is also dead, and that's how you know she's really a Fire Emblem protagonist. Interestingly, she's not wearing her crown that she has in the first trailer. It's possible it's just something that she wears into battle, but maybe she comes into it during the course of the story. This trailer really didn't give any clues as to why she's wearing a crown of Nabatean remains, so maybe she battles him at some point and wears it as a prize. I also wanted to point out how insane the outfits these characters are wearing look. I said I would pick Theodora before, but I don't know if I can handle this for an entire game. Gameplay time, the hub world is back. I think the base camp in Three Hopes was a huge improvement over the monastery, so I have faith that they can continue to improve on it. I get the merits of having a large, explorable area, but Garrick Mach's size really was its downfall. We only get to see a segment of this minimap, but things don't seem too terribly spread out, at least not as bad as the monastery was. Kai goes into the arena and we get confirmation that the chicken jockey is in a personal class. I'm sure there's some YouTuber out there already working on his Can I Beat Fire Emblem Using Only Chickens challenge run. There's also a date and what seems to be the year in the bottom left corner. This might indicate that this game is a sequel taking place over 200 years after Three Houses. Keep in mind though that this does take place in a completely different society from Fodlan. Who's to say they don't run on a different calendar? I'm bringing this up because I really do think this game is going to be a prequel. There are some things that I think might make more sense if this game came first. Like, for example, Alucard's sword. What if Lamine's relic weapon started off as a sword, but over time deteriorated to the point that only the crest and a small amount of bone was left, meaning that only a gem was all that could be made of it? This contradicts her being a Gremory in the Golden Deer final boss, but I don't know, I think it's cool. Next we meet a new character, Nine, and this is the first design I'm a bit negative on. Maybe it'll grow on me, but I think her outfit looks anachronistic. It's not the worst thing ever, we've seen how low this series can go in this regard, but I worry that she'll stick out among the cast. She does have the crest of Albin on her chest though, so I wonder if she'll be connected to Dietrich. For a split second, we see a menu for interacting with Nine, and it's stated that she can be recruited by fulfilling her requests. I know realistically this will probably be like 3 houses where you just find random items belonging to characters and return them, but it would be cool if it were more involved. Ideally, there could be a side story involving that character where completing an optional map recruits them. Having short arcs focused on specific side characters could do a lot to make the cast more memorable. Next, we have a big-ass map. A lot of these icons have fish or food or miscellaneous items on them, which makes me think they might function like the farms or ore deposits in Fates. Just places to gather menial resources without much going on. There are some that seem to represent caves though. I know I'm probably in the minority here, but I would like to see this game expand on the dungeon crawling elements of Gaiden and Echoes. No other game has something like this, so more involved dungeons could be cool. Just make the fatigue system matter this time. There's also some larger diamonds which I assume represent actual battles. They're not all the same pattern though. I'm guessing the smaller ones might be optional skirmish spots while the big fancy ones are the main story battles. We get a glimpse of a promotion and it seems to work like 3 Houses did. I didn't really care for this system in 3 Houses. If I remember correctly, the optimal play was just to try as many times as you can at the start of each week and then reload your save if you failed. I hope they just have strict level and weapon rank requirements this time around. Actually, no, I hope they make it worse. I hope they ask you real-world questions like Persona does. If you don't know why July and August both have 31 days, you'll be stuck as a Myrmidon forever. As the trailer continues, we keep getting these little hints of Fodlan's possible presence in Dagda, such as this scene with the characters eating. I'm mainly interested in this guy. Blonde hair with green tips is a Nabatean trait, but the fact he's dyeing his hair blonde and covering his ears makes me think he's trying to hide his heritage. His design feels evocative of Levin, so I wonder if that's intentional. This segment of gameplay with Leda is important. We saw Kai running around in the first trailer, but now we know that there will be gameplay segments like that for each of the 4 protagonists. Some people assumed Kai would be the self-insert and you would have to choose among the other 3, so this further disproves that. Also, her retrieving loot from a chest could be a glimpse of that dungeon gameplay I mentioned. The sword she gets has a curse stat, and I'm guessing that's related to the protagonist's special techniques that are discussed a bit later in the trailer. Maybe they've all been cursed by some deity and that's what's given them this power. Maybe having a higher curse stat could increase the ability strength or make it charge up faster. I didn't mention this earlier, but Kai is shown to have some red gem in his hand that's probably the source of his magic blasting, and also red eyes. Maybe these are both linked to something done to him by a god. We get some combat next, and Ursula here is pretty clearly related to Marianne. They share the same crest and hair color. She also has that symbol that was associated with the curse stat. Given that she has a crest, I wonder if crest bearers are considered cursed in Dagdan society. The generics also seem to be these weird shadow people instead of having normal portraits. I hate this. At least make them masked or covered in armor. Let me buy the idea that I'm fighting real people. I think it's gonna be really jarring to see the enemy models where they have faces and normal designs, and then contrast that with these literally lifeless portraits that look unfinished. Also, this isn't actually a problem, but who in God's name plays any of the 3D Fire Emblem games with the camera rotated like this? I think it looks just awful, but then again, I played Fire Emblem well before any isometric SRPG, so I'm probably just biased. Next is a couple gameplay snippets. I don't really have anything to add, I just think Sirocco looks awesome. Here we have those techniques I was talking about. I really think these things were given to them by some higher power, maybe in the form of a pact or something. Stories about mortals and gods making pacts are always cool, so I like that a lot. In this scene, Kai has a cavalier icon next to him despite clearly being on foot. Maybe this is some form of pair-up or adjutant, but it could also be that he's dismounted for some reason. We've also got a game of DDR going on up here. Next we get some story cutscenes with what is pretty clearly a Nabatean holding a baby. I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and say that this is Seros, and the baby is either her own or a descendant of Byleth. I don't actually have anything to go off for that theory, but yeah, I can swing hard if I want to. We meet this angel guy that we later learn seems to be this game's actual avatar, so if it wasn't deconfirmed already, it's definitely not Kai. I really love the contrast between this character and Byleth, what with Byleth being called the Ashen Demon and this guy literally being an angel. His name is Eshmel, and his outfit seems really similar to Arval's. Maybe he's another creation of Epimenides. He seems to have a relic weapon that's lacking a crust stone, and based on the dialogue in this cutscene, has an antagonistic relationship with Sothis. This would further support the idea that he's a creation of the Agarthans. Sothis is also shown to be wielding the Health Clear here. In 3 Houses universe, this axe originates from the Empire's Wyvern Court and dates back to the War of Heroes. Maybe it'll become Sothis' personal weapon in this game. What's interesting is how little Eshmel is actually in this trailer. Most of the footage focuses on the 4 heroes, which makes me think that he enters the story much later than we'd normally expect. Personally, I think that after whoever you've sided with wins the tournament, that's when things will go down with this cult, and then Eshmel enters the story. After that, we get a release date and the trailer ends. Overall, I'm still pretty excited for this game. After seeing more of the character designs and learning a bit more about their backstories, I think I'm leaning more towards Dietrich now rather than Theodora. I just can't with this eye patch guy, he's just so— oh my god, dude. But Dietrich having ties to Fodlan has piqued my interest. It's gonna take a while to stop calling him Alucard though. Also, the possibility that Dietrich's party will consist of characters descended from 3 Houses characters is pretty interesting. It's kinda hard to judge the gameplay as of now. It seems to borrow a lot of mechanics from 3 Houses, but the issue with that game was less the mechanics mechanics, and much more so the maps. We've barely seen anything in terms of map design, so it's hard to tell how fun this game might be. Well, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's all greatly appreciated. You know, my next video was going to be completely different, but obviously I have to talk about the new trailer. I don't plan on becoming an FE news channel, I don't make videos fast enough to keep up with that, but I think I'll talk about Fortune's Weave whenever something big drops. My next video is going to be a comparative analysis of a few different characters across the series, so stay tuned.